Hello. Today I want to talk to you about being observant and being vigilant in your garden. I'm Liz Zorab and this is Byther Farm. In this video I sound quite breathless, but I want to reassure you that I'm not unwell. I have my microphone tucked inside my t-shirt and you can hear my breathing quite a lot, but that's just about me being not terribly fit and not about me being poorly. A few weeks ago I planted parsnip seeds in this bed and some of them have germinated and others haven't. So it's time for me to have a look and see if I need to replace any of the seeds. I put this netting over it, not to protect it from butterflies, but from much larger pests, the local cats, who were very keen to use the bed as a loo, and this has just deterred them really from using it. So I used 3 different packets of seeds, one at this end, one in the middle and one at that end. And what I have got in here is lots and lots of weeds, which I'm going to remove, and things like borage, which is not a weed in most of the garden. When it's actually in a growing bed, it is. And what I can see is that I have got some parsnips at that end and some in the middle, and not a single one has germinated at this end, which makes me think that the seeds I used at this end were old. One of the things about parsnips is the seeds become less viable as time goes on. So it really is recommended that you use fresh parsnip seeds, so from last year, or if like me you very often save seeds, it may have only been collected shortly before you sow it. So let's have a little look. There is just nothing. There are absolutely no sign at all. So it's the 7th of May today. It's quite late in the season to be sowing them, but I'm going to sow a few. I'm not desperately worried if we don't have more parsnips, because we have got them growing self-sown ones in elsewhere in the garden. But I quite like this bed to have a few more in it. So I've got the seeds, so I'm going to use them. Whether you're new to the channel or you've been following our story for the last 3.5 years, I just want to say thank you for subscribing. This week the community of followers on YouTube has reached 40,000, which is just mind-blowing that so many people have actively chosen to come along this rocky journey of gardening and homesteading with us. I was having a look at the analytics back panel thingy on YouTube. Dangerous, I know. And I noticed that last month there were 106,000 individual people who watched the channel, and there are 40,000 people subscribed, which means there are 65 or 66,000 who are watching the videos but haven't chosen to subscribe. So this is a direct appeal to you. If you are enjoying the channel, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and then you'll be informed every time we put up a new video. This is a variety called Tender and True. It's actually my favourite variety of parsnip, and I'm literally just going to make some straight lines, straightish, with my fingers. And this line is what is often referred to as a drill. So you're just making just a little niche in the soil. These ones I'm doing about 1 inch to 1.5 inches deep at the most. Let's do the other side. And the reason for making a drill is, well, firstly it gives you a clear line of where you're going to put your seeds, but also makes it very easy for you just to tip the soil back over the seeds to cover them up. So this says this packet has about 500 seeds in it. and it has 2 packets in it. Well, that's a nice surprise. I opened a packet of seeds the other day that had no packet in it, so this is like payback for for that one. That's very nice. So I've probably got double the number of seeds, and the other one is sealed, so I will save it for next year. Right, I'm popping the seeds into the palm of my hand. I'm holding that packet shut so it doesn't spill everywhere, and then I'm going to try and plant 1 or maybe 2 seeds about every 3 or 4 inches, more like 3 inches, so that I don't have to thin them out too much. There we go, and I've dropped 1 there. There's always a temptation with seeds to put loads of them in, and I often succumb to that temptation too, but all that means is actually you're wasting your seeds, you're wasting resources, you're wasting the nutrients in the soil to help them grow once they've germinated, you're wasting water, and I can't pick this one up, there we go. And there's just, I think there's no need to sow more than you need. You can sow a few extras as a kind of just in case, but if you're going to throw a load of seedlings away, it's just a waste. It's a shame to do. So there's a bit of a space there, so I might put a few more in there. Space them out. There we go, and then I've just got that side to do. The nice thing about seeds that are as big as parsnips is that you can actually see where you've already sown them. Lots of seeds are very small and end up being the same colour as the soil, and are really hard to see where you've sown them. And then I'm going to fold over the top of the seed packet, so I've folded that over 2 or 3 times so they can't spill out, and then I'll put them back in the paper envelope they came in, and then I'm going to just use my fingers like this to flick the soil back over the seeds, cover them up. It's a quick, light action. I don't want to do this because it will wash the seeds in all different directions, and they won't have that nice lines, and those nice lines give me a guidance as to when they come up what is likely to be the seeds that I've sown and what's likely to be a weed. And over time you get to recognise weeds quite quickly actually, but when you're first starting a new bed you won't necessarily recognise which weeds are very common in your area. I've talked in previous videos of why I don't hoe weeds immediately in most beds. I know it's a really good practice, but I want to see what weeds come up, because sometimes what other people might consider weeds I consider a valuable crop. But these, which is rosebay, willow herb and groundsel, borage where I don't want it to be, and thistles. No, they are just weeds, and they can be composted. And other times I find plants that I would really like to transfer to another site. Sometimes I decide I will transfer potatoes, which is what I've got here. There were potatoes in this bed last year, and I obviously didn't find all of the tiny potatoes as I was harvesting. You can see these are red Duke of York. Didn't spot them all when I was harvesting them, so those have resprouted, but I can get these, if I'm quick, straight into another bed, and they should grow on fine. Let's go and do that. And the other thing I'm going to do in this bed today is to sow a few carrot seeds, which I'm going to sow in between the rows of parsnips. I did this last year and it worked really well. Because they're both root crops, they'll both grow straight down into the ground, not spread out too far in any one direction. So the carrots can grow, and I'll harvest those and I'll get those out, and that'll leave plenty of space for the parsnips to mature. Neither parsnips nor carrots are very good when you start them in modules. I did start carrots in modules last year, but I think as I planted them I must have kind of squeezed the soil around them, because they got all very intertwined and very gnarly, and they were perfectly adequate, but they were really difficult. They were really difficult to clean, to eat them. So I've just noticed this little plant, and it could be one of two things. It could be mare's tail or horsetail, which we haven't had in this garden yet. It's an invasive weed, and I really don't want it here if I can help it. But it could also be a little pine tree, a little spruce or a little pine. So I'm going to get that into a pot and grow that on for a short while I try and work out which plant it is. Last year I found one growing in the gravel in the kitchen courtyard garden, and I put that in a pot, and that's doing really well. It's about 4 inches high now. So this might be the same, but we'll wait and see. So I filled a pot with the same soil from the bed, because obviously it's happy growing in that. I've lifted it. I'm going to make a little dent in the top of the soil, just a little dent in there, and sit this into it. Very gently firm the soil around it. Being really careful not to break the stem. And I've labelled it pine ? And the date, so I know when I've taken it out of the garden. I'll give this a really good drink by sitting it in a tray of water and letting the water come up through the soil, rather than drowning this little plant from the top. This is an aluminium, like a little roasting tray from the kitchen, which has been recycled. And here we go. Just going to stand that in it for 10, 15 or maybe even half an hour, and the water will come up through and water that little plant. And we'll see in a few weeks' time whether I've been carefully nurturing an invasive weed or a young tree. This is the little tree that I found last year. And I think it's either a spruce or a cypress or something like that, and it has these little slightly curvy needles and a little pointy bit in the middle, which is exactly the same as this little plant has, the curled bits, the slightly coloured tips at the end and a pointy bit in the middle. So I'm feeling quite hopeful that they are the same thing. Time will tell. Back to the parsnip bed to put some more carrots in it, so maybe it's not the parsnip bed anymore, but anyway, back to that bed. Just going past the flowers, which I'm really pleased with. They're looking great. They are looking really great. So I will get the last few weeds out of here that I can see are definitely weeds. And some of these are called fat hen or lamb's quartered, which apparently the chickens really like. My chickens didn't get that memo, amongst with many memos that they haven't got, and they don't eat them. So these will just all get added to the compost heap over by the potatoes, and in a year's time, something like that, they'll get returned to the ground as compost. So that whole process has taken about 4 minutes to pull those weeds out. Obviously I paused because I was putting some seeds in and then also dealing with what I think is a baby tree. And I also need to deal with this little lot. Well, this grass is going to seed, so I'm actually going to grab that now before it shakes its seeds everywhere. And then these stinger nettles, well, I'm going to put on some stronger gloves, cut those down and put them onto the potatoes that I'm growing under some wood chippings. So they're actually growing in homemade compost, and I've piled wood chippings on top. I'll add the stinging nettles to those wood chippings. They're really high in nitrogen and in nutrients, and as they break down, they'll help to feed the potatoes. And then that's this bed done. I won't need to do much to it again now for, well, until I notice another weed. Well, I probably don't need to weed it again for another couple of weeks or more. I will water in the seeds that I've sown today to give them a good start. And I might cover this back over with a netting just to stop the cats kicking around those new seeds.